Okay, so this is a video about strengthening with duct tape, and I made some error with the camera where it cut out. So I had demonstrated how if you want narrower strips, what you can do is you take a whole strip like this, and then you can just tear it right down the center, and if you do it smoothly, you have two strips that are about half the size. In this case, one's slightly narrower, one's wider. Sometimes they'll stick together. With practice, that becomes less frequent, but it can still happen even if you have some experience. And it's also good if you have, because duct tape is so sticky, it can be a little bit difficult to work with. And if you have some idea of what size strips you want to work with, it's a very good idea to tear it or cut it in advance. Even though duct tape can be torn, if you have a set of sharp, clean scissors, you can also use those. I'm going to leave one strip long like this in case I do need to cut a different piece. And also I do recommend going with duck, as in duck's quack tape, because I found that it leaves less residue behind than most other brands of duct tape. So in this case, what I'm doing is I don't want this hat to literally come apart at the seams. So I'm going to, now that I know that this is large enough to stretch over the jar lid, I'm going to put some tape around these seams to keep them together. And that's something that duct tape is pretty good with. Probably won't be able to, let's see if I can give a different view for the camera where you can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to take a strip and I'm just going to put it perpendicular because I don't want, that's where I want to strengthen the material. You could do this on both sides, but I want to leave the outside of this hood as simple as I can, just to make cleaning easier. And I recommend cleaning something like this with a damp cloth with mild soap. While this hasn't been tested yet, probably can't see too well what I'm doing here. I'm trying to tape around this seam. So first I'm going to tape one side. I'm going to try not to stick to the fabric on the other, and then I'm going to fold this now that I've got, let's see if I can get a better angle. So what I did is I taped one side of this seam, and now without getting the fabric on the other side, so now I'm going to fold that over, and then so that now I've kind of got a bit of duct tape going along the top of this seam to hold it together. So what I was saying is that I recommend cleaning with damp cloth that is damp with mild solution of soap and water, because CoV-2, the CoV-2 virus, is destroyed when its outer coating is taken apart by soap. And it's often delivered in respiratory droplets, which are surrounded in water. So if there's some soap on a surface, it makes sense that the soap should be absorbed into droplets landing on that surface and then destroy the virus effectively on contact. I haven't come across direct research for this, but it's not going to do any harm in general to have mild coating of mild soap on a surface. Let's see if we can show taping around a seam again. The only thing is surfaces that you would eat off of, if you have soap on them, they could, that would taste bad. Or in the case of this hood, the mild soap would work well on the outside, but if something's coming in contact with your face, then soap can cause some irritation. But in general, like the outside of this hood, or another example, a good place to use a soap solution might be like a tabletop. It's not going to do any harm, and it might help. The cleaning with the soap and water will definitely destroy viruses on the surface. So that's, and it's also very economical. The soap tends to be, soap and water is cheaper than hydrogen peroxide and bleach, and also tends to be less damaging. In many cases, alcohol might leave less of a residue and in some cases be less damaging. If you can afford it, I would recommend alcohol for cleaning, say, the inside of this hood. But that can also be expensive. So this was a video about how to use tape to strengthen a material. And I don't know if you could, tape works a lot better when it's, it does much better when it's, stresses are applied directly on the plane of a surface that it's attached to. If you try holding tape together between surfaces, it's easier for it to come apart. So if you're trying to, let's say I have this seam, and I want to keep the seam together, it's good to have the tape run directly along the fabric. So what I did is I taped one side and then folded that over and taped the other side. And that's a good technique for taping the seams, because as long as the tape is, essentially the fabric is going to act for strength, mainly in the tape's also acting for strength. That's not, my words are failing me right now. So the tape can have, if this starts to rip, the tape can add some strength to keep it from ripping. But if, let's say I taped like this and just taped over it and there was a fold there, the tape is less strong in terms of keeping itself from being able to peel away from a surface. And also, if it peeled away, it would damage the coating on the surface. So by making sure the tape is in direct contact to the fabric, with no ways for the fabric to separate like that, it helps it augment the material. So again, this video was about strengthening a fabric with duct tape.